All right, counsel, you may proceed.
Thank you. We're all here because of Mindy. Every single one of us is here because of Mindy. Sometime the weekend over Thanksgiving, Saturday into Sunday, 2022, everything changed. For every single person that testified. Everything changed. Mindy, have you ever been to a pond and you drop a rock in the center, or if you were a kid, you used to skip it? You'd see the ripples, right? You'd see those ripples go out from where you dropped the rock. All those witnesses were ripples, and he dropped the rock. He killed her. He took her from everyone. A bright light, kind, good-natured. You're going to see a lot of things that we talked about in opening statement. My mom always told me, under promise, over deliver. Under promise, over deliver.
You kind of overpromised the
That's what we've
openings.
done. December 2nd, 2022, at about 4:50 in the afternoon, several hunters found the horrific discovery. The rock.
Not the yelling.
Those hunters are ripples. Never the same. They were out there hunting Thanksgiving weekend, big hunting season in Georgia, deer, right? And they come across, I'm sorry, a headless, legless body of a woman. Law enforcement had no idea who she was for months because of him. Because he made it possible only to figure out who she was through a buccal swab from her mom. In May, almost 6 months later, he did that. Right here in Liberty County. And he dumped her in the woods. And I submit to you, he dumped her in the woods because that was a great place to hide a body. The problem is when you're not from Liberty County and you don't know Barrington Ferry Road and you don't know Jones Road and you don't know where they meet in McIntosh, you don't know there's a camera on the water tower. You don't know that there were logging trucks. You saw the logging trucks going down the road. Counsel would have you believe that Agent Sands and his team should have identified any possible human that went down that road. How is that relevant in any way, shape, or form to who would have had access to Mindy? Now, all of you promised me during jury selection you would not check your common sense at the door. You'd bring it with you, you'd evaluate the evidence, and you would use your common sense. They found a torso, a knife, tubs, and wipes. All things he had access to, all things he purchased close in time to when this happened. He bought a shovel at an Airbnb. that he paid $4,500 a month for. And he's doing their handyman work. He's fixing mosquitoes for a solid 5 months. Totes that he said in the interview, black and gray. Common sense. He didn't know what was recovered at the crime scene. Black and gray. The real killer knew what color totes to put out there before he gave a statement? Common sense. You heard all about how the GBI looked for her remains, where they were recovered, where they were found in proximity to each other, over 3 miles. And he buried her head. Why? I submit to you, because that's the last thing he saw. He just didn't want to see it anymore. Some random person decides only to bury that. That doesn't make any sense. The person that buries the head is somebody that loved her. So he said, right? Loved her so much that he was clearly cheating on her. He admitted that on the stand. Heck, he told you, Joy, that was another woman. Very inconvenient to start a new relationship when you got a pregnant wife. He told you he thought she was pregnant, right? But I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, Nicholas Kassotis, he didn't believe she was pregnant. He wanted kids so badly. He wanted kids with Heather, right? He wanted kids with Mindy. He even went with Samantha Kolyesnik. Within days of their marriage, they went to a what? A preconception appointment. He wanted kids, and he found out Mindy wasn't pregnant. Because if Mindy was pregnant, you know what he doesn't do? He doesn't kill her, because he wanted kids. He found out she wasn't. That's the problem. Now, the judge is going to instruct you. I don't have to prove motive. The law does not require it. But it's human nature to wonder why, right? Like, we want to know why. And I submit to you, that's what the evidence showed. He wanted children. He wasn't getting there. He needed another option. First divorce didn't work out so good, did it? $1.6 million that he didn't have. And the moment he came into money, what did he do? Me. I'm taking care of me.
All the family
Okay,
members.
Cameron, who he got on the stand and said how much he respects, admires, emulates. He gave her 0. The knife. State doesn't work on suppositions. We don't guess. We don't present you with, we think, could be, maybe. Facts. Evidence only. Toolmark expert. State requested it. Defense requested, hey, look at this. How come? She told you. Lauren Satcher told you. You cannot test that knife on flesh. And she said that that was power tools to cut the legs, unfortunately. But ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you, murderers don't generally say, hey, let me leave my murder weapon at my crime scene. But what you might leave, as a prosecutor, is a wiped off, cleaned up, latex hand-wearing gloves and cleansing wipes. Because that's not evidence. You can't catch me if I cleaned it off. And there he is. See, he had to admit things because we had them. The problem is We didn't expect us to have her so soon. Now, if you're not from South Georgia, just off the road, not far enough. You need to be out in the water. But her body was heavy, that portion. And I submit to you, if you look at the photographs, you'll see the weights. And I'm being respectful, because she deserves that. But look at them. Her torso and arms was very heavy. You couldn't get that far enough out. You didn't plan on us finding her that fast, is the problem. And in case you didn't believe that he was there are the records. That legitimately triangulates directly over Home Depot. His credit card, his car, and his phone. And if you recall during opening statement, I said to you, pay attention when he says, I did not know my car had phone. In fact, I would say his eyebrows went almost up to his hairline. Because at that moment, Mr. Kassotis realized, oh, they got more stuff. I submit to you, there are no mosquitoes on the way down to Riceboro. He bought the knife and then drove down to Riceboro. But he got here, but he told you that he bought the knife because he needed to go and take care of the mosquitoes right then and there. You need to pay attention to the details here. And I submit to you, when you hear those details, common sense, that's all you need for this. And then you watched his car travel all the way down to Riceboro. And then he tells you, if you look carefully, I turned off my phone. But it was pinging until he got to Jones Road. Look at the map. It shows exactly where it intersects, where the ping last happens. He didn't turn it off and use a Garmin to get himself down there. He had the phone on until he got to where her body parts were. Because he didn't know that the car was still connecting to the tower. And if you look at that top box on the right side, it shows all the times that car kept pinging while he was in that area. And I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, the reason there's no blood in the house, or not a lot of it, is because he cut her up in the woods. He had 2 hours. 2 hours with a power saw. No one else had access to her. He told you that she went to the hospital. Common sense, right? You recall Dr. Lehman testified and he went like this. She had defensive wounds. Did she have defensive wounds in the hospital? So the doctor killed her. With defensive wounds in the hospital. Common sense. And in case it wasn't just me saying it, Agent Bernie showed you specifically the drive test to show that his phone, his car, his person, he admitted he was there. I'm not asking you to guess. He told you he was there. The defendant got on the stand and said, I was in the car. I had my phone. I had my credit card at the Marathon gas station. He swipes his card. Black tub, gray tub. How is that possible in any other way? And the judge is going to explain reasonable doubt. And I submit to you, that's his job, not mine. I'll talk some about the law, but if there's any discrepancy, you always listen to the court. Unless he put those tubs out there, there's no way he would know that a black and a gray tub were what would be recovered. and then her blood's in it. Facts. That's evidence. The 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th, they find the rest of her remains, and they find the second tub. And you see them here. And all the efforts they made to figure out if you left any evidence behind. They brought up DNA, and did we or didn't we test this, that, or the other thing. You heard the DNA analyst say the only sample that they found that had more than one DNA profile was the futon. The futon in a house that's an Airbnb, lived in and sat on by Mr. Kassotis, Mr. Frank, Mrs. Betsy, and Mindy. So if I found DNA belonging to the defendant, the argument would be, well, he lives there. Doesn't mean he killed her, right? But now it means, well, he wasn't the one that did it. We showed you where the remains were tossed. I submit to you that's evidence of concealing a body. I submit to you that's evidence of dismemberment. I submit to you it's tampering. You saw those wipes that were used to wipe down the knife itself. They wiped, there were at least a dozen of them in the crime scene photographs. They had to search 30,000 acres. Helicopters, drones, dogs, people. Mr. Glover went out and looked for her. Because you bring people home. All of her. You drop that rock in the pond, every one of them is a ripple. You don't dig up that space without a shovel. Submit to you, look at the picture. You can physically look at the picture. You can see where the root has shovel marks from where it got dug into and where it hit. He was just trying to get the dirt, but there was a root there. For people that are from this area, I fancy myself able to say that now. You hit roots. There's a lot of low roots. And there he is, buying a shovel. When you're staying in an Airbnb, living on the run, gone in an hour, he's buying tools to fix a house that he pays $4,500 a month for. Common sense. And then we do the autopsy. And why is that important? Well, because we don't know where Mindy took her last breath. I submit to you, that's because of Mr. Kassotis. 9 traumatic wounds to the head. We don't know that every wound occurred inside of the dwelling in Savannah. We don't know that. We don't know if she was strangled, if she was first subdued simply. We don't know if he rolled her up in the rug, if he took her, but we know there's blood under that rug. Rusty threw up on it. Really? There's blood under the rug. Defensive wounds on the arms that I submit to you. You're not getting beat up in the hospital. Inconsistent, and it doesn't make sense. Then there's the abdominal wounds. This goes back to Mindy not being pregnant. And you're mad! She told you she was pregnant. You're mad. That's why you bury a head. That's why you stab her in the belly. That's murder, Mr. Kassotis. Premeditated, intentional homicide. And then he cut her up. And he tossed her out like garbage. That is premeditation. And we're not required to prove that, but we have it here. Intent to kill. And even if you don't believe that at the moment he intended, you think that maybe he just wanted to hurt her, That's ag assault, aggravated assault, felony murder. You assault somebody and then ultimately cause their death. So whether you think he started it with the intent to kill her or he just killed her in the process of the assault, one's aggravated assault felony murder, one is malice murder. And you're going to hear the judge talk about venue. Venue means where you died, where the crime itself was committed. And normally, you're going to hear that venue is the place where the crime was committed. And I submit to you, when you drop the rock in the pond and you don't know where it happens, the legislature in the state of Georgia does not allow for you not to be guilty on a loophole. If you believe that we couldn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt where she took her last breath, then where her body is recovered is the law. And that's why we're all here, Liberty County, with that ripple. Because her torso was found in the backyard. It took us almost 6 months to figure out who she was. Counsel would have you believe that everybody was like, oh, Nicholas Kassotis, that's who it is. That's not what happened. That's not what happened at all. You all heard that. Forensic sketches, fingerprints at the crime scene, DNA, no identity. We found it's the same person. Then Miss Betsy, she gave us a buccal swab. Heck, she didn't even believe he was a GBI agent because of Nicholas Kassotis. They believed him. And I submit to you, in hindsight, my other half said don't use any sports references. I'm not really good at it.
Oh no.
But where I come from, it's called Monday morning quarterbacking. Right? In this case, we didn't know who she was. We find out who she is, and then they go backwards from there. They knew who Nicholas Kassotis was as early Detective Frost said that he had gotten Home Depot records. He knew as early as December 7th. They didn't arrest Mr. Kassotis. They ran down hundreds of leads through VICAP, NamUs, the Missing and Exploited Children, through the FBI. They ran down hundreds of leads. Agent Sands told you they had some that were close. They didn't know who it was until they got her DNA. And once they figured out that it was Mindy Mebane Kassotis, now he made sense. They had been running down all the leads up until that point, but they didn't know it was him until they knew it was her. The only one with access. And why is that important? Because Mr. Kassotis says his wife went to the hospital on Saturday. And he tells Joe West, she died Sunday. But doesn't tell her parents that she died until Thursday. Well, that's a problem.
Yeah, this was real bad for him.
You told Mr. West that she died in one day. That's not a little different. That's Mindy. And I think that's important. That's Mindy. A friend, a sister, a daughter, a wife. And I submit to you, Mindy loved Mr. Kassotis. And she didn't want to lose him. I submit to you, she wasn't pregnant. Mr. Kassotis told you that he and Heather divorced because she told him she wanted kids but didn't really. That's what he told you on the stand. Mindy knew, I submit to you, that if he found out that she wasn't pregnant, she'd lose him. The doctor testified, told us the range. That's when the GBI could finally start to narrow it down. And the last person to see her alive was Mr. Kassotis. Mr. Frank said that he saw her right before they left to go to Hilton Head. And when he came back, he never saw her. They thought she was at the hospital. Mr. Kassotis didn't have a name of a doctor, a location of a place that he went to. He never visited her. His wife was 8 months pregnant, due in January, and he didn't go see her? I know you did not check your common sense at the door. He didn't go see her because she wasn't in a hospital. He didn't go see her because he knew she was dead. And he didn't ask about a baby because he knew there wasn't one. You heard those statements. He talked about a ring. I think ladies and gentlemen of the jury will know that wedding engagement rings are different for every lady. Bands are different. He claimed she was mistakenly cremated. And then he gave them back her bands. That's not possible. Because he conveniently tossed those in the Havre de Grace with no one present. All these people that needed to know that Mindy was gone, he didn't invite a soul to share her scattering of her ashes. How does that make sense? And then every day in the days following, telling her parents that she was gone, he is on the move. Quick, quick, quick. We go from Georgia, all the way down to every state across the Northeast and all over, not here, in a quick rush effort to now not be Nicholas James Kassotis. And I submit to you, he knew Heather was still looking for the money. He's an attorney. You think he didn't get proof of $1.6 million paid? He didn't get a single pay stub, a single document, a single anything. Now, to be clear, it is the state's burden to prove our case. But when a defendant chooses to testify, you evaluate their credibility the same way you would any other witness, and the court's going to instruct you how that works. And I submit to you, not a word he said, not a word of that makes any sense. Jim McIntyre with the FBI, 2 years, he didn't think they were going to pay attention to his case at all, but he thinks a 2-year commitment from a FBI agent to become his personal security team, not a penny. Common sense in this courtroom, please. We follow the knife. We talked about it. Then he burned up the car. I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that Mr. Kassotis is an individual that capitalizes on opportunity. He had a check that he couldn't cash to buy a house with Samantha. He didn't have access to any money, he told you that. But he was getting an $860,000 check that poof went up in flames. I submit to you, because he didn't have that money. He was telling Samantha, we're getting a house. But when he had to actually buy it, he didn't have the money. Car goes up in flames. He testified or asked questions about a recall on a police interceptor vehicle, not on his Ford Explorer. A recall that doesn't apply to the vehicle he purchased. And at first the knife was in the car, then it was, well, I think it might be somewhere else. I mean, you didn't find it there, there's another place. Well, I saw it in Pennsylvania too. And we saw the house. And I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, she was definitely struck. There was a bloodletting event, meaning she bled at the house in Savannah. We know that. We saw her blood. But I submit to you, her body was put to rest here in Liberty County. And we know that because we saw the evidence. Blood on the wall, blood on the futon, blood on the floor. And then we followed the car And it was Nicholas Kassotis that happens to be the one driving right past the camera. Man, I'm lucky. I submit to you, he didn't bank on that camera. It looks like loads and loads of woods. If you're not from here, that's what it looks like. That tiny little pumping station. That pumping station, I submit to you, solved a murder. There's the car. If you look at those photographs, you would think he was only there for an hour, right? Looks like he came and he left. But those roads, they loop around. I submit to you, look at the photographs. Look at the satellite. Look at the maps. Agent Bernie told you that car was pinging there, total. Didn't turn back on until he's leaving the area going back up 95. He had 2 hours in the woods. I submit to you, he dismembered her out there. And then he tried to get rid of the body. And you're going to hear testimony, or rather you heard testimony
What?
about all of the items that the indictment references. They reference the totes. They reference the knife, meaning the Milwaukee knife. They reference the deer processing kit. Oh, and now that deer processing kit was for Matthew. He's not a hunter. But it was a gift that was so important that when your wife passes, you didn't make sure that he got it? Does that make any common sense? We followed the phones, and in case you weren't sure, he went right back home. We followed his car back to the house. Y'all listen to the statements from the defendant. I submit to you, it's called consciousness of guilt.
Pause
When you
before
try
that
to
one.
cover something up, you start telling lies. The problem is, and Agent Sands said it, when you tell a lie, it's hard to keep up with them, because then there's another hole that you got to plug up, and you got to keep telling more lies to cover up the first lies. And Agent Sands said to him, it's like a puzzle. You burned some of the pieces, you threw some of them away, but I submit to you, y'all can still see the picture. He told them she was alive when he knew she was already dead. He told Samantha she was dead before she was dead. He told people she died in different ways. He told Joe West she went in on Saturday, she became septic, she got sepsis, and she died from an infection the next day. That would have been Sunday. He told her parents Thursday. I made a list of some of the things that were inconsistent. Your recollection is what governs. Was it credible? Was it believable? You told me you would know how to evaluate somebody being truthful. Use your common sense. Talked about what Mr. West said. But on December 1st of 2022, he tells her what Mr. West said. But on December 1st of 2022, he tells her parents that's when she passed. And then he tells some people she was cremated. Actually, he tells law enforcement that, but he doesn't tell the family. He knew and didn't tell them. He told them there was going to be a service. He didn't have any reason to think that date range was not right when Mindy's body was out there. Conveniently, exactly when he was there. That is the most unlucky man on the face of the planet. For a murderer. Why was the divorce important? The divorce was important because he had to have a reason to be telling this whole Jim story to begin with. Nicholas Kassotis did not want to pay Heather Thomas 1 penny. He did not want to pay her the $1.6 million. And he didn't. And he absconded. And he told some story to the court about how he had $32 million. $32 billion. Dang. That's a lot of money. But now it's Mindy's fault. Oh, it's Mindy's fault that he doesn't have the money. Look at the records, the transcript. He blames Mindy. When there's a problem, well, either Jim did it or now Mindy did it. Mindy met Jim, but he never looked at credentials. Apparently, Mr. Kassotis hasn't done anything. Nothing paid, ever. Cameron, nothing paid, ever. Mrs. Kolyesnik. Driver's license, photoshopped. There was no Georgia Nicholas Stark driver's license. That, I submit to you, is manipulation. He needed another option. Look at it. It's not even the same font.
Oh, that is really bad.
They got engaged. But even worse, I submit to you, if you heard and you listened carefully to Samantha's testimony, she said at the end of November he had her tires fixed, and then he sent her flowers the next week, maybe the first week of December. When he found out his wife was dead? Really? They were remarried. And whenever there's something that he has to be held accountable, Jim told me to do it. Can't find a person that doesn't exist, I submit to you. He texted back and forth with Samantha repeatedly. Did Jim tell him to tell what to say in every text? I submit to you there is no Jim. Jim started as a convenient reason to get away from Heather, to not pay the money. And he convinced Mindy. I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, Mindy believed him. So did Cameron Nelson. So did Chris Chaplet. So did Mindy's parents.
So
he was
close.
a decorated lieutenant, I forgot what rank he said, in the Navy. 10 years almost with the JAG. 2 tours. Of course they believed him. That's that Monday morning quarterback thing. It's easy to look at it now when you see all of this in front of you and say, who would believe that? People that didn't know all that. People that thought Nick and Mindy were telling them the truth. Mindy believed him. I submit that to you. And she didn't want to lose him. There's no ring. There's no Jim. And there was no baby. And he didn't ask about it because he knew that. I submit to you, that's why he stabbed her in the belly.
Here we go, we're getting to that belly.
He never once, in 2 hours and approximately 10 minutes in Pennsylvania, ever asked about the baby. If you just found out that your wife died by some other means, because he already knew. He never once asked about the condition of her body. I I submit to you because he knew.
Or one more, we break the goal.
The court's going to instruct you on the charges. I've talked about some of them: malice murder, felony murder. There are additional charges that you're going to hear as well, and those charges include venue. The court's going to instruct you. I talked to you about this early on. Venue is where the body is found in a homicide if we don't know where she took her last breath, if we don't know where the crime was committed. And I submit to you, when he dropped that
broke the
rock in the
goal.
pond, he made it impossible to know that. Concealing the death of another. I submit to you, you saw all the ways he did that. And in case there was any question, her blood in the totes makes it clear that it was him. He got the car washed the next day. But he didn't do it. Possession of a knife during commission of a felony. I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, counsel's not wrong about one thing. He didn't use the knife on the bones. Or at least we can't say for sure, because we don't guess as the state. We ask experts to analyze evidence, and then we submit that evidence to you. Good, bad, or indifferent. You got the whole case. The parts that can prove things, the parts that limit, and Lauren Satcher testified she couldn't, at the outset, she could not have said that the deer processing kit was used on the bones. She knew that. The only thing she could have proven at that point was exclusion. State doesn't make assumptions. We get evidence. And that investigation kept going long after Mr. Kassotis was wrongfully arrested, is what he would submit to you, that they just focused on him. I submit to you that's not true. And the evidence shows that. Then there are the possession of the tools for the commission of the crime. I submit to you that the Ford Explorer was used to drive her body there, otherwise it wouldn't have needed a car wash. I submit to you that the insulation knife, unfortunately, was used on her physical body, not on her bones. He had to gain access to it. I submit to you that the deer processing kit
11 months.
was purchased the day before. He drives down to dump her, and he's not a hunter. And for the very first time, we're hearing that he bought a deer processing kit for Matthew. It couldn't be excluded. That's what Lauren Satcher said. The tubs and the shovel. We know the tubs were used. Her blood was in them. The shovel, I submit to you, look at the photograph. And obviously removal of body parts from the scene of the death. I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, her body was clearly moved about. She died at some point, and her remains were dispersed. And the tampering, if you read the indictment, it's very clear, it's specific as to what the allegation is. It's the effort to clean up or get rid of biological evidence. Nicholas Kassotis dropped a stone in the pond. And I submit to you, every person in this courtroom is a ripple. I submit to you, Mindy, she deserves your attention. This case is about her. I ask you to go in the back, look at the evidence, and come back with what is the only appropriate outcome. Guilty of all charges. Thank you.
50. Well, was
Thank
that?
you, counsel.
I had 53.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it has been a long day, but before I excuse you for the evening, I want to sort of give you an outline as to what we'll do tomorrow. I'm going to ask you to come back tomorrow morning at 8:45, around 9 o'clock or thereabouts. I'm going to read to you the law that applies in this case, and you will be duty-bound to follow that law when you begin your deliberations. That should take about